The stuff I learned when I was 20 is useful today. Not necessarily the same way and not necessarily every day. There won't be any scarcity of opportunities in your life, although there will be days when you feel that way. All you had to do was just read and think, and you were going to cover a lot of possibilities, probably a very high percentage of them good and some of them sensational. You can't really lay it out ahead of time. You can't have a defined roadmap.
When you start investing at young age, it gives you time to learn from mistakes when the stakes are smaller. A young person can ride the ups and downs of the stock market easier than someone 5 years from retirement. For young investors, taking on the extra risk now will likely result in greater rewards in the long run. Let's look at billionaire investors Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's best investing advice for young investors.
So I was able to save $10,000 by the time I was 21. And, that was a huge head start. If I hadn't been able to do that, and, my first child came along when I was 22, so I mean, the family, it's much easier to save it in those teenage years if you're lucky enough to be in a family where where your parents are taking care of your financial obligations. Every dollar then is worth making $10 or $20 later on. And so if you are interested in financial matters, I would read financial publications. I would read whatever was of interest to me. I'd be curious about how the businesses around the town of Kearney operated. I would, to the extent that you can get people to talk to you, and people usually like to talk, learn about who's got good businesses in Kearney and why they're good businesses, and learn about the businesses that went out of business and why they went out of business, and just keep accumulating knowledge. That's one of the beauties of the business that Charlie and I are in, is that everything is cumulative. The stuff I learned when I was 20 is useful today. Not necessarily the same way and not necessarily every day, but it's useful. So you're building a database in your mind that is going to pay off over time. But you have to have a little money to work with. So there's nothing like getting a few dollars ahead, stay away from credit cards, and you can have a lot of fun if your mind goes along that track as you get older.
We live in a world that values the present, but your future self will thank you for the actions you take when you are young. That will improve your life in the long term. Any little bit of money you can put away now will grow to a much larger amount over the next few decades. All it takes is a little patience combined with the drive to actually do it.
I mean, what you really want a course on investing to be is how to value a business. That's what the game is about. I mean, if you don't know how to value a business, you don't know how to value a stock. And if you look at what is being taught, I think you see very little of how to value a business. And the rest of it is playing around maybe with numbers or, Greek symbols or something of the sort. But it doesn't do you any good. I mean, in the end, you have to decide, whether you're going to value a business at $400 million or $600 million or $800 million, and then you compare that with the price. And that's what investing is. And I don't know any other kind of investing, basically to do. And that just isn't taught. And the reason it isn't taught is because there aren't teachers around, who know how to teach it. I mean, they don't know themselves. And since they don't know themselves, they teach something that says nobody knows anything, which is the efficient market theory. And if I didn't know how to do it, and if I ever teach physics, I'm going to come up with a theory that nobody knows anything, because it's the only way I can get through the day, But it's fascinating to me how the really great universities operate in this respect. If you get a sacred writ, I mean, you get in the finance department because you sign on, to whatever the present group thinks. And if they think the world is flat, you better think the world is flat too. And your students better answer that the world's flat when they get on exams. I would say investment, finance teaching in this country is in general, is kind of pathetic.
Well, I think the business schools do a pretty good job when it comes to accounting, or personnel management, or there are a whole lot of subjects I think they do quite well with, but they miss one enormous opportunity. If you learn to think intelligently about how to invest successfully in businesses, you'll become a much better business manager than you will if you aren't good at understanding what's required for successful investment. So they're missing a huge opportunity to improve the management profession by doing such a lousy job in teaching investment.
Starting to save and invest early is one of the greatest favors you will ever do for your future self. Do not let valuable time go to waste. You can live an average life, well within your comfort zone, living paycheck to paycheck like the people you see around you. Or you can break out of the mold, start working hard now, and secure your financial freedom.
Charlie and I probably, we've made money in a lot of different ways, some of which we didn't anticipate, when we were 30 or 40 years ago. But we did have the ability to recognize some. We didn't have the ability to recognize others. But we did know when we knew what we were doing and when we didn't. And we just kept looking. We had a curiosity about things. You would know at a time like the long-term capital management crisis, for example, that there were going to be ways to make money. I mean, they were going to be out there, and all you had to do was just read and think 8 or 10 hours a day, and you were going to cover a lot of possibilities, probably a very high percentage of them good and some of them sensational. So you can't really lay it out ahead of time. You can't have a defined roadmap, but you can have a reservoir of thinking, looking at different kinds of businesses, looking at different kinds of securities, looking at markets in different places, and you will then spot a reasonable number of things that come along. You won't spot every one of them. We've missed all kinds of things. But the biggest thing, too, is to have something in the way you're programmed so that you don't ever do anything where you can lose a lot. I mean, our best ideas have not been better than other people's best ideas, but we've never had a lot of things that pulled us way back. So we never went 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We probably went 2 steps forward and a fraction of a step back. But avoiding the catastrophes is a very important thing, and it will be important in the future. I mean, you will have your chance to participate in catastrophes. Frankly, when you get the chance to talk to somebody like Lorimer Davidson, as I did when I was 20 years old, I probably learned more from Lorimer Davidson in those 4 or 5 hours than I learned in college, with the exception of learning some accounting and 1 or 2 subjects like that. So you just want to soak it up.
If your money is invested in the stock market, it will experience compounding growth. Your money makes you money, and then that extra money makes you even more money, and then that money makes money, which makes more money, and this goes on and on and on. It is an exponential increase. Young people have usually given up an entire decade of investing help from the world's most powerful force, compounding. Compounding shows that the time value of an investment is often much more important than even the amount of initial money invested.
The place to look when you're young is in the inefficient markets. You shouldn't be trying to guess whether, one drug company has a better drug pipeline than another. You want to go, when you're young, someplace that's very inefficient.
And you shouldn't be trying to guess whether the stock market's going to go up or whether long-term bonds are going to change in yield. I mean, you don't have anything going in that kind of a game. But you can have a lot going in games that very few people are playing, and maybe where they're even got their heads screwed on wrong in terms of how they're thinking about the subject. There won't be any scarcity of opportunities in your life, although there will be days when you feel that way.
The stock market has averaged close to 10% annual growth since the early 1900s. There are some years it goes up and some years it goes down. But in the long run, over time, the stock market goes up.